Hi, good morning. I'm saying good morning because this is first thing in the morning for me. So I need to offer an excuse for why I look this way and sound this way and why I'm being really quiet because I don't want to wake up my son. Okay, I binge watched Netflix Maid this week and whoa, I was so gripped by the show and I didn't expect it at all. I think many people might have the same impression I did because my friend said that she did. But when I watched the trailer, it just seemed like another struggle story. And I didn't really want to go through those emotions. I mean, after 2020 and everything. But it wasn't that. I mean, it was a struggle story, but the way that it was done, I feel really made it something entirely different. I think the main asset to the story or the difference is that the main character didn't show as much emotion as an actress could, and that makes it tolerable to see her go through so much. Um, and I think I actually identify with that. So I'm just going to give my reaction to the show, and then I'm actually going to give some personal to give how it affected me personally. So, the show is based on a book written by Stephanie Land called Maid, Hard Work, Low Pay, and a Mother's Will to Survive, and that is on my reading list. The show is 10 episodes, they're about an hour long. The main character is Margaret Qualley, she plays Alex, and her mother in the show, Paula, is actually played by her real mother, Andie MacDowell. I think Andie did an excellent job. She plays a mother with undiagnosed mental health disorder, and she really captures the instability of it, and the little things that you probably recognize from being around people who have a mental health disorder, like this, the little things, the random laughs. And I think Margaret is so effective, not just how she kind of under emotes, but because she is so regular looking, but also so beautiful, she really sells it for me because we have met women or we've seen women who are struggling in poverty and wasting their time with some man, and they're so beautiful and so smart and bright. I feel like that's a story that may or may not have been told. She's so unassuming as a star that she's able to deliver this role and not really distract you from how much she doesn't fit. It's like her plainness, for not trying to diminish her, but her plainness really allows her to shine in this role. So Alex is, I think she's about 25, and then when the show starts, she has a 2-year-old, and her boyfriend is played by Nick Robinson. His name is Sean Boyd. Her boyfriend throws something at her or by her, and she just leaves the next day. But she has nothing because of the nature of the relationship. She didn't have anything for herself, and she embarks on a series of struggles to try to get on her feet and get out of an abusive relationship, an emotionally abusive relationship. And there are so many times where you think like things should work out for her and they don't, or people should have sympathy for her and they don't, or she should break down and she doesn't. But it's not done in such a way that you get frustrated. It's just, you're wrapped in the story and you realize this is people's stories. This is why people stay in abusive relationships. This is how people stay in poverty. There are several times in the story where she's down to no money, and I haven't been down to no money since I was a freshman in college, and that didn't last long. And it's interesting how much this show made me feel grateful, which is partly why I picked this sweatshirt, for the fact that while I've had similar experiences to her, I'm nowhere near in that situation. So like I said, there's several times you think you can see why she should or would just go back to her boyfriend and repeat the cycle. But at some point you realize like it's kind of a matter of life and death, like in a metaphorical way, because she does have a lot of potential. She does have a dream, and to just remain in a situation that is harmful to her, to remain in that world is a death of a dream. So the other characters I really liked were Regina, who is this high-powered lawyer that Alex cleans for, and she's really rough at the beginning, but she ends up being one of the people who saves Alex. And one of the reasons I liked her character is because she was an affluent Black woman, and it helped me to like envision myself in that way. But I also felt like it was a complicated relationship, and there was tension, and there was kind of like some redemption to it, where Regina was pretty mean to Alex, but Alex was also able to vindicate herself. So I like to see that. Denise was the woman at the domestic violence shelter, and if you watch the show, you'll know exactly why I loved her. She's played by BJ Harrison, and if I didn't say, Regina is played by Anika Noni Rose, and it took me so long to realize where I'd seen her from, and it's Dreamgirls and The Princess and the Frog. Anyway, BJ Harrison's character, Denise, she's the person you wish you had in your corner. Like she's the grandma, the aunt, the teacher. She just is a very nurturing person and very empowering person. So I really enjoyed seeing her in the role. Like I said, Paula, Alex's mom, that was a great performance. She was very compelling, also very frustrating, and you could see why Alex takes on so much in her life. This is where I really related. When I grew up, my mom had mental health and physical health issues, not like this woman. So it wasn't so much that I was taking care of my mom and my mom was like so hard to manage, but it's the sense that you are responsible for someone and the sense that they're not responsible for you. That's what I could really relate to. Like I said, my mom had physical health issues. So she really did do her best in raising us and taking care of us, but sometimes she couldn't because she was incapacitated with her own health. And as an adult, it was hard for me to not take on her problems, not just her physical health problems. Although I do still get kind of worked up about, wanting her to take care of herself so that she's better and so that I'm not worried about her, but also just anything, just feeling like it's my responsibility to make sure she has what she needs and she makes the right moves. And at some point in therapy, I had to learn that I have to allow her to live her own life. And if she fails, then I have to allow her to fail. It's not my responsibility. And in the show, Paula tells Alex, I'm not your responsibility, because Alex continues to try to assume responsibility for her mom. And it's frustrating because you know that that's holding Alex back. And ultimately, Alex just has to let her mom do her own thing. It's like she wants her mom because her mom's really all she has, but she also needs to allow her mom to be her own person and to fail, because sometimes that's the only way people learn. Now, Alex does have a dad. His name is Hank, and he's played by Billy Burke. You've seen him as Bella's dad in Twilight. I knew he was kind of familiar, and now I realize where he's from. He seems like a good character, and he's really standoffish. You eventually find out why, but their relationship really reminded me of my relationship with my dad. There's one scene, this is the scene that really, really got me, but there's a scene where she meets with her dad and he's like, I'll do anything for you. And she asks him to acknowledge that Sean has emotionally abused her in front of him. And it really reminded me of like me asking for something for my dad. And while he said, I'll do anything for you, it's like the thing that I need him to do or be, he can't do it. So it was frustrating. But that was an important scene for me, and I'll tell you why. After I talk about Raymond Black, who played Nate, oh my gosh, I was so attracted to him. I don't know if it's very basic of me because he seems like a very like white American looking Indian. So it might be basic for me to have been so attracted to him. But he also was really nice and really willing to help. You want to see more of him. He really doesn't care about Alex's station in life, and he helps her out. But one thing she says that really makes sense to me is that she doesn't want to be in a relationship with him because it won't be even. And I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of us do that. We get into relationships that aren't even because we don't have the awareness. We're not. She knows that if he helps her out, it's going to be kind of imbalanced in terms of the power and access in the relationship. I should say a little bit more about the boyfriend, Sean. Did I say who he was played by? Who is played by Nick Robinson. He is an alcoholic, and he works at a bar. During the course of the show, he does acknowledge that he's an alcoholic and begins to work on himself. And you can tell he really loves Alex and he wants his family together, which is what makes it, there's the conflict there.
I'm hungry.
You can see that it's harder on all of them for Alex to be, trying to get on her own 2 feet. And I can see how a lot of people would give up for that reason and fall back into the situation because they feel like they're just creating more burden. So I'm proud that Alex stuck to her guns. Let me give a better synopsis of the story. Alex leaves her abusive boyfriend, has to come to terms with the fact that she's been emotionally abused because he hadn't hit her. In order to get government assistance, she has to have a job. So she gets hired with a service called Value Maids. And that's where she meets Regina, the Black lawyer who is meeting her. And then she goes to the domestic violence shelter, and a series of events ensue where her housing is jeopardized. What's interesting is that it actually gave me more insight to why some people move a lot. It's not just because they're running from their debtors, but it can be because their housing is so unstable. And if you don't have the money, you don't have options, and you don't have reliable housing, as we saw. Like, she would get a place and something would happen. She would stay with somebody and something would happen. It actually made me think about the times people stayed with me, my mom, and my brother in our apartment, our 3-bedroom apartment. Sometimes it would be like a whole family, and sometimes it would just be one woman. And so it gave me some insight into that. Like, it's hard to find, if you don't have a lot of money, it's hard to find a place to stay that you can depend on still being a good place to stay in 12 months. So the personal part of this, I mentioned that Alex's conversation with her dad reminded me of a conversation with my own dad. That's not exactly what really was moving to me, but it was the fact that when she was asking him to acknowledge what happened, he instead kept giving excuses for what Sean was going through. He said Sean is an alcoholic, she's trying, he's got a lot on him. And because her dad was also an alcoholic, and her dad is, I don't know, maybe Sean's sponsor for AA. But what that showed me, or what that reminded me of is how I often use that excuse for my husband, because right now my husband is going through counseling, dealing with the death of his dad, and as a result, I haven't been really asking him to meet my needs. But if I really want to soar like Alex wants to, I've got to be willing to put myself first. I think this is relevant because if you're like me and the other women that I've talked to that are kind of like who I'm talking to now, I feel like a lot of us put everybody first and we accept everyone's limitations, be it temporary or voluntary, involuntary. We continue to accept everyone's limitations because we can handle it. Alex could definitely handle it. But what if we don't? What if we just allow people to hold all of their stuff so that we have the freedom to deal with ourselves? So actually, I came home, I was kind of emotional. I wrote some thoughts down and I talked to one of my friends, and my husband asked who I was talking to, and I eventually told him how I felt like I couldn't really talk to him and ask him to meet my needs right now because of what he's going through. And in the past, it's been for other reasons too. Like when we were a military family, there was a lot going on with the military. So I just always felt like I just knew what he had the capacity for. But I have to be willing to allow him the chance to be responsible for himself and be responsible for the part of the load of his that I carry. And I think that's a big lesson in the show, because at various times, Alex's success is extinguished by someone else's demon. And she loses opportunities because she's caring for other people and she's not saying, no, you're not going to be a part of my life. And I understand the conflict of that. I mean, these are her loved ones and this is her environment, and this is kind of why it's important to be selective about who's around you, because if you're involved or not, they can still have a huge impact on you and your opportunities. So Maid is a story about personal triumph. It's a real human story, and it's not as terrible as you might be thinking. It's not as stressful. It's very beautifully made. The actresses and actors are, it's just, it was really, when I was watching it, it was hard for me to tell why I liked the show so much, because I watched like 3 episodes in one day. But when I got to the end, and I didn't cry at all until the very end. It was actually a scene where Alex went to Regina's house, and I was on the Stairmaster. I just like started crying. But I think it was so good to me, and I couldn't describe it because I related to it so much. And I'm glad that I was able to see that story and recognize a parallel with myself and some of the choices I'm making. And maybe it'll have the same effect on you. But regardless of if you can relate or not, I do recommend you watch it on Netflix. If you like this content, if you like me, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. Turn on the notification bell so that you can see when I make a new video. Until next time.